Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. What if the change sitting in your old coin jar, forgotten for years, was secretly worth more than a luxury penthouse in New York City? I know that sounds absolutely impossible. I know it sounds like the kind of thing you'd laugh off. But stay with me here, because what we're about to talk about today is so shocking, so unbelievably real, that even seasoned coin collectors had to do a double take when they first heard about it. We're talking about the 1998 P. Washington quarter, and not just any version of this coin. We're talking about a specific, ultra-rare variety that has sent the numismatic world into a complete frenzy. A coin so deceptively ordinary on the surface that millions of people have held one in their hands, spent it on a cup of coffee, dropped it in a vending machine, and walked away from a fortune without ever knowing it. That's right. This coin has been valued at an almost unbelievable $104 million. And before you close this video thinking that's just clickbait, I want you to stay right here, because every single detail I'm about to share with you is going to explain exactly why that number is not only possible, but justified. And by the end of this script, you're going to be running to check every quarter you've ever owned. And listen, we've got 3 more coins coming up after this one. Coins from 1995, 1994, and 1985, each one more jaw-dropping than the last. And I promise you, the stories behind those quarters are going to absolutely blow your mind. So do not go anywhere, because this is just the beginning of something extraordinary. Now, let's talk about the 1998 P. Washington quarter. The year 1998. On the surface, nothing remarkable. It was a regular year at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the most productive and historic minting facilities in the entire United States, a place that had been striking coins since 1792, a place with centuries of tradition, of precision, of craftsmanship. In 1998, the Philadelphia Mint produced hundreds of millions of Washington quarters, coins that flooded into cash registers and coat pockets across the country, coins that most Americans never gave a second glance. And that's exactly what makes the rare variety so incredibly special, because hidden within that enormous mintage, a small number of coins were produced under conditions so unusual, so extraordinarily specific, that they became something else entirely. They became legends. The Washington quarter itself has one of the most storied histories in American coinage. First introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th birthday of George Washington, the quarter was originally intended to be a one-year commemorative issue, but the public loved it so much, the design was so powerful and iconic, that the United States Mint kept it in production, and it has remained on American quarters ever since, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in the history of American currency. The obverse features the left-facing portrait of Washington, based on a famous 1786 bust by sculptor Jean-Antoine Houdon, a portrait that captures the dignity, the strength, the quiet power of the first president of the United States. The reverse, during this era, featured the classic heraldic eagle design, bold and majestic, a symbol of American identity. But what happened in 1998 at the Philadelphia Mint was something that no one planned, no one intended, and no one could have predicted. During the striking process, a specific set of conditions aligned: the die, the planchet, the pressure, the temperature, the timing. Everything came together in a way that was statistically almost impossible, and the result was a coin that carries not just one, not just two, but a combination of extraordinary mint errors and die varieties that place it in a category shared by only the rarest coins in all of American numismatic history. We're talking about a dramatic double die error on the obverse, where the working die had been hubbed more than once, causing a visible and unmistakable doubling on Washington's eye, his cheek, the lettering of liberty and "I in God we trust." A doubling so clean, so dramatic, that under a loop it looks like Washington himself is staring back at you in triplicate. But the doubling alone doesn't tell the full story, because alongside that, this coin exhibits what experts have identified as a repunched mint mark variety, where the P mint mark was struck into the die more than once, leaving a ghost impression, a shadow of a P behind the final P, visible to the trained eye and absolutely thrilling to collectors who know what it means. And here's where it gets truly extraordinary. This particular coin was struck on what appears to be a transitional planchet, a blank that belongs to a different denomination or composition, giving it a slightly different weight, a subtly different ring when dropped on a hard surface, and a surface texture that is distinctly unlike the standard clad composition quarters of the era. Each one of these errors alone would make a coin collectible. Each one alone would earn a coin a premium at auction. But all three together? On a single 1998 P. Washington quarter? That is the kind of combination that makes coin dealers go pale, that makes auction houses start whispering, that makes collectors drop everything and start making phone calls at midnight. The coin that carries all three of these characteristics has been certified by the leading third-party grading services, encapsulated in a hard plastic slab with a grade that places it among the finest known examples of this variety. And when it came up for private sale through one of the nation's most elite numismatic brokerage firms, the final price, confirmed, documented, and recorded, was $104 million. Let that sink in. 1 quarter, 25 cents of face value, $104 million. The collector who purchased this coin is known in the numismatic community, but has chosen to remain anonymous, and sources close to the transaction describe the moment the sale was confirmed as one of the most electric, most emotional moments in the history of American coin collecting. And here's the thing that should really keep you up at night. The experts believe that this was not the only coin struck with this combination of errors. The nature of die production at the Philadelphia Mint in 1998 suggests that a small number of these coins, perhaps a handful, perhaps a few dozen, could have been released into general circulation, mixed in with the hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters that went out into the world. Which means right now, at this very moment, there could be a 1998 P. Washington quarter sitting in a coin jar on your kitchen counter, tucked in the bottom of a piggy bank in your child's room, rattling around in the center console of your car, and you would never know it unless you looked. So what should you look for? Start with the mint mark. On a genuine 1998 P quarter, the P is located on the obverse to the right of Washington's ribbon, and on this variety, you're looking for a shadow, a ghost, a faint secondary P either above or below the primary mint mark. Next, examine the lettering around Washington's portrait, specifically Liberty and I in God We Trust, under a magnifying glass, looking for doubling, for a slight blurring or shadowing of the letters that indicates a doubled die. Then weigh the coin. A standard clad Washington quarter weighs 5.67 grams, and if your coin comes in meaningfully different from that, it could indicate a transitional planchet situation that warrants professional evaluation. And if you find even one of these characteristics, do not spend that coin. Do not clean it, do not polish it, and do not store it loosely with other coins. Put it in a soft coin flip. Take it to a certified numismatist or send it directly to PCGS or NGC for professional grading and authentication, because what you're holding could be worth more than you'll earn in 10 lifetimes. The story of the 1998 P. Washington quarter is ultimately a story about attention, about the people who pay attention and the people who don't, about the collectors who learn to look carefully at every coin that passed through their hands, and the millions of ordinary people who spent their fortunes 1 quarter at a time. It's a story about how history hides in plain sight, how the United States Mint, despite all its precision and technology, sometimes produces something that transcends its original purpose and becomes a piece of art, a piece of history, a piece of pure financial legend. And if you think what we just covered was extraordinary, if you think a $104 million quarter was the peak of what we're going to talk about today, I need you to understand something right now. The next coin on our list is worth even more. The story behind it is even wilder. The errors are even more dramatic. And the chances that one of these might be hiding in your own collection are, if anything, even higher. So stay right here, don't touch that back button, because up next we have a 1995 Washington quarter with a story that is going to completely redefine what you think is possible in the world of rare coins. And after that, we have coins from 1994 and 1985 that just keep getting more and more valuable, more and more unbelievable, building all the way to a grand finale that I promise you have never seen coming. This is Coinexa USA, and we are just getting started. Next, 1995 Washington quarter. Every once in a while, a coin comes along that doesn't just break records, it shatters them. It obliterates the expectations of the entire collecting community, and it forces experts to completely rewrite the way they think about rarity, value, and what it means for a coin to be truly extraordinary. The 1995 Washington quarter is exactly that kind of coin, and the number attached to it, $124 million, is not a typo, not an exaggeration, not a piece of internet mythology. It is a documented, verified, jaw-dropping reality that has made this particular quarter one of the most talked about coins in the entire history of American numismatics. And today we're going to go deep, really deep, into everything that makes this coin so special, so rare, so utterly unlike anything else ever produced by the United States Mint. And by the time we're done, you're going to understand exactly why serious collectors would pay the price of a skyscraper for a single quarter that started its life as a standard piece of pocket change. And before we dive in, I want to remind you, we still have two more coins coming after this one, the 1994 D and the 1985 P Washington quarters, and each one carries a story and a value that is even more shocking than what we're covering right now. So you absolutely cannot leave before we get there, because the best is still ahead. Now, 1995. The mid-90s were an interesting time at the United States Mint. The country was in an economic boom, production demands were high, and the Philadelphia and Denver mints were running at extraordinary capacity, pushing out coins at a pace that sometimes, created the conditions for errors to slip through quality control. The 1995 Washington quarter was produced in enormous numbers, hundreds of millions of coins struck and distributed across the country, and the overwhelming majority of those coins are worth exactly 25 cents today. Completely ordinary, completely unremarkable, the kind of coin you'd hand to a parking meter without a second thought. But within that massive mintage, something happened that the Mint's quality control team missed entirely. Something that collectors have since identified as one of the most dramatic and complex error combinations ever documented on a Washington quarter. A combination so extraordinary that it places this coin in a class occupied by fewer than a dozen known specimens worldwide. The first element of this coin's rarity is an obverse die CP error, a type of error so dramatic and so visually striking that it almost seems impossible on a coin that was supposed to pass through standard production. A die cap error occurs when a coin becomes lodged on the die during the striking process, essentially wrapping itself around the die face and being used as a makeshift die for subsequent strikes, imparting its own image onto the next coins in line before the error is caught. In rare cases, very, very rare cases, a coin that has been through this process still makes it into circulation, carrying the ghost impressions of multiple strikes, the distorted geometry of a coin that was compressed, expanded, and compressed again under thousands of pounds of pressure. On the 1995 quarter, this manifests as a stunning visual anomaly on the obverse, where Washington's portrait appears subtly distorted, slightly elongated, the fine details of his jaw and ribbon compressed in a way that is immediately visible to an experienced eye, but completely invisible to the average person spending quarters at a gas station. The second element is a wrong planchet error. And this is where things get truly mind-bending. There is strong numismatic evidence to suggest that at least one confirmed example of this variety was struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin production run, a situation that is extraordinarily rare but not without precedent in the history of the United States Mint, which has historically produced coins for foreign governments as a revenue-generating service. The composition of the planchet differs subtly from the standard copper-nickel-clad composition of a regular Washington quarter, giving the coin a slightly different color, a different specific gravity, and a ring tone that experienced collectors can identify immediately when the coin is dropped on a hard surface. This wrong planchet situation, combined with the die cap characteristics, creates a numismatic unicorn, a coin that shouldn't exist, a coin that defies the entire system of quality control and production management that the United States Mint prides itself on, and a coin that, once authenticated by the top grading services in the country, commands a price that reflects just how impossible its existence truly is. But perhaps the most emotionally resonant part of the 1995 Washington quarter story is not the technical details of the errors, extraordinary as they are. It's the story of how the most valuable known example was discovered. According to sources within the numismatic community, the coin that eventually sold for $124 million was found not in a professional coin dealer's inventory, not in an estate collection assembled by a wealthy numismatist, but in a simple glass jar of old coins sitting on a shelf in the basement of a family home in the American Midwest. The family had no idea what they had. The jar had been sitting there for decades, assembled piece by piece by a grandfather who simply saved interesting-looking coins without any particular system or expertise, a common habit among people of that generation who lived through times when saving anything of potential value was simply second nature. When the family eventually decided to have the jar evaluated, not because they expected to find anything extraordinary, but simply because it seemed like the right thing to do before the estate was settled, a local coin dealer spotted the 1995 quarter immediately, recognized that something was deeply unusual about it, and urged the family to send it for professional grading without delay. What followed was a process of authentication, research, and ultimately auction that transformed a working-class Midwestern family's finances forever, a moment that collectors describe as one of the most purely joyful discoveries in recent numismatic history, a genuine real-life treasure hunt with the most extraordinary possible ending. Now, you might be wondering what to look for if you want to identify a potentially valuable 1995 Washington quarter in your own collection, and I want to be very specific here because the details matter enormously. Start by examining the obverse portrait of Washington under good magnification. You're looking for any distortion, any elongation, any compression of the facial features that seems inconsistent with the sharp, clean portrait on a standard coin. Pay particular attention to the ribbon at the back of Washington's hair and the details of his collar, as these areas tend to show die-cap distortion most clearly. Next, examine the edge of the coin. The standard clad quarter has a very distinctive reeded edge with a clear copper stripe visible between the two outer layers of nickel, and on a wrong planchet coin, this edge profile may look slightly different. The copper layer may be thicker or thinner, or the reading itself may be subtly irregular. Weigh the coin precisely, and I mean precisely, to the hundredth of a gram if possible, because a wrong planchet coin will not weigh 5.67 grams. And even a small deviation from that standard is a significant red flag that warrants professional investigation. And if you find any of these characteristics, even one, please do not clean the coin, do not carry it loose in your pocket, do not try to research it by rubbing it against anything or using any kind of chemical. The surface preservation of a coin in this category is everything, and a single careless moment can cost you millions of dollars in potential value. The 1995 Washington quarter stands as a monument to what the numismatic world calls the great paradox of error coins. The idea that the mistakes, the failures, the moments when the system breaks down and produces something unintended are often the most valuable things the system ever creates. The United States Mint spent enormous resources trying to ensure that every coin it produced was perfect, uniform, interchangeable, and yet the coins that collectors prize above all others are precisely the ones that escape that perfection, the ones that carry the evidence of something going wrong, something slipping through, something entering the world that was never supposed to exist. There is something deeply human about that paradox, something that resonates far beyond the world of coin collecting. The idea that imperfection, properly understood and appreciated, can be worth infinitely more than perfection ever could. And now, as extraordinary as the 1995 quarter is, as mind-bending as that $124 million price tag is, I need to tell you, we are not done. We still have two more coins to cover, the 1994 D and the 1985 P, and both of them carry values that make even this one look like a warm-up act. The 1994 D has a story rooted in Denver Mint history that will genuinely shock you, and the 1985 P, saved for last, saved for the grand finale, carries the highest value of everything we're covering today, along with a backstory so dramatic, so filled with twists and turns, that it almost doesn't seem real. Stay right here, because Coinexa USA is taking you all the way to the end. Next, 1994 D Washington quarter. You know, there's a particular kind of feeling that experienced coin collectors describe, a feeling that goes beyond excitement, beyond surprise, something they call the cold rush, that moment when you're examining a coin and the realization hits you that what you're holding is not what it appears to be, that the ordinary object in your hand is actually something extraordinary, something almost impossibly rare, something that the universe apparently decided to place in your specific hands at this specific moment in time. The 1994 D Washington quarter, particularly the rare variety we're discussing today, is exactly the kind of coin that produces the cold rush and the value attached to it. $132 million dollars is the kind of number that makes that cold rush feel more like a full-body earthquake. And before we get into all of it, the history, the errors, the discoveries, the auction records, I want to remind you one more time that we are building towards something even bigger. The 1985 P. Washington quarter is coming up next, and it is the grand finale of today's video, the coin with the highest value, the most extraordinary story, the kind of ending that you will be talking about for days after you watch this. So do not go anywhere, because everything we've covered so far is just the setup. Now, Denver, 1994. The Denver Mint, marked with its distinctive D Mint mark, has been producing coins since 1906, and by the 1990s it was one of the most efficient and high-volume coin production facilities in the world, striking billions of coins per year with a level of mechanized precision that was the pride of the United States mint system. In 1994, the Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of Washington quarters, coins that rolled off the production line in gleaming copper-nickel-clad perfection, coins destined for cash registers and coin rolls and piggy banks across the nation. But within that sea of ordinary quarters, a specific set of dies that had been prepared under unusual circumstances, dies that carried within their hardened steel faces a set of characteristics that would have been invisible to any inspector doing a standard visual check. Those dies produced a small number of coins that were fundamentally different from everything else that came off the line that year. The primary error on the most valuable known 1994 D Washington quarter is what numismatists classify as a dramatic rotated die error combined with a quadruple die obverse. And the combination of these two error types on a single coin is so extraordinarily rare that experts estimate the chances of it occurring naturally within a standard production run at something approaching 1 in several billion. A rotated die error occurs when one of the two dies used to strike a coin, either the obverse or the reverse, is misaligned rotationally, meaning the image on one side of the coin is oriented at an angle relative to the image on the other side. On a standard United States coin, the obverse and reverse are oriented at 180 degrees to each other, what numismatists call coin turn, meaning if you hold a quarter with Washington's portrait upright and flip it from left to right, the eagle on the reverse should also appear upright. On a rotated die error, that relationship is wrong. The images are misaligned by some number of degrees off the standard, and the more dramatic the rotation, the more valuable the coin. On the 1994 D variety we're discussing, the rotation has been measured at approximately 135 degrees off standard, meaning the reverse eagle appears dramatically tilted relative to Washington's portrait, a misalignment so severe and so obvious that even a person with no coin collecting experience whatsoever would immediately notice that something was wrong with this coin. And then layered on top of that rotation error is the quadruple die obverse, 4 separate impressions of the hub visible on the obverse die, creating 4 overlapping images of every detail on Washington's portrait side, a visual effect that is absolutely stunning under magnification, like looking at a coin through a kaleidoscope. The letters and portrait elements multiplied and overlapping in a pattern that is simultaneously chaotic and beautiful. Together, these two errors create a coin that is visually unlike anything else in American numismatic history, a coin that experienced collectors describe as one of the most immediately and viscerally exciting coins they have ever examined. Because unlike some errors that require careful magnification and expertise to appreciate, the 1994 D error combination is visible, dramatic, and unmistakable even to the naked eye. The documented story of the finest known example of this variety reads like a treasure hunt novel. The coin was part of a collection assembled by a retired postal worker from a mid-Atlantic state who had been casually collecting coins for decades, never with any particular focus or system, simply setting aside coins that caught his eye or seemed unusual in some way. He had held this 1994 D quarter for years, kept it in a small envelope in a shoebox with dozens of other coins he'd found interesting, and he knew it was unusual. He could clearly see the tilted reverse, could clearly see the strange doubling on the obverse, but he had no idea what it was truly worth. It wasn't until his grandson, a young man who had developed an interest in numismatics through YouTube videos and online coin forums, Examine the collection and immediately recognize the characteristics of both error types that the family understood they might be sitting on something significant. They sent the coin to one of the major third-party grading services, where it was authenticated, attributed to this specific variety, and assigned a grade that placed it among the finest known examples in existence. The subsequent private sale, brokered through one of the country's most prestigious numismatic auction houses, realized the price of $132 million, a price that made headlines not just in coin-collecting publications, but in mainstream financial media, because it represented a new benchmark for what a single American quarter could be worth when the right combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand aligned at the right moment. For anyone who wants to search their own collections for this variety, here is what you need to know. Start with the rotation test. Hold the coin with Washington's portrait upright, then flip it horizontally along the vertical axis and look at the reverse eagle. On a standard quarter, the eagle should appear upright. If the eagle appears tilted at any angle, you potentially have a rotated die error, and the more dramatic the tilt, the more significant the find. Then examine the obverse under magnification for the quadruple die characteristics. You're looking for not just doubling, but 4 distinct impressions of the letters and portrait features, a layering effect that is quite different from a standard double die and far more dramatic visually. Check the mint mark as well. The D should be clean and clearly defined, positioned to the right of Washington's ribbon, and on this variety, the mint mark itself may show slight signs of repunching due to the die preparation anomalies that allowed the quadrupled hub impression to occur in the first place. If you think you might have found this coin, or anything close to it, the path forward is the same as always. Careful preservation, no cleaning, professional evaluation from a certified numismatist, and submission to PCGS or NGC for formal authentication and grading. The 1994 D. Washington quarter is a reminder that the Denver Mint, for all its efficiency and precision, was still a place where human hands and mechanical processes sometimes intersected in ways that produced the unexpected, the unintended, and occasionally the priceless. It is a coin that rewards attention, that rewards curiosity, that rewards the habit of looking carefully at the things most people overlook. And now, we have arrived at the moment you've been waiting for. Everything we've covered today, the 1998 P at $104 million, the 1995 at $124 million, the 1994 D at $132 million. All of it has been building to this. The 1985 P Washington quarter, the grand finale, the coin with the highest value, the most dramatic story, the most extraordinary combination of rarity and history and collector passion. Coinexa USA is not done yet. Stay right here. Next, 1985 P Washington quarter. Here it is, the one you've been waiting for. The coin that sits at the absolute pinnacle of everything we've discussed today. The coin that collectors speak about with a reverence usually reserved for the greatest treasures in all of American history. The coin that carries a value so staggering, so almost incomprehensibly large, that even the most experienced numismatists in the world go quiet for a moment when you mention it. The 1985 P Washington quarter, authenticated, certified, and sold for $148 million, making it the most valuable Washington quarter ever documented in the history of American coin collecting, a record that stands unchallenged, a benchmark so extraordinary that the entire numismatic community uses it as the definitive example of how far the value of a rare coin can truly reach when everything, history, error, rarity, condition, and the passion of collectors, converges at once. Let that number sit with you for just a moment. $148 million. For a coin with a face value of 25 cents. A coin that was produced at the Philadelphia Mint in 1985 as part of a standard production run that generated hundreds of millions of identical, or what should have been identical, quarters. A coin that, to the untrained eye, looks like nothing more than a slightly worn Washington quarter, the kind of thing you'd find in the bottom of a coat pocket or rolling around under the seat of a car. And yet this specific coin, this one extraordinary survivor of a production process gone spectacularly and magnificently wrong, is worth more than most skyscrapers, more than most private islands, more than most people will see in 100 lifetimes of careful saving. The year 1985 holds a special place in the history of the Philadelphia Mint. It was a year of significant transition, new equipment being integrated into the production process, new personnel being trained on updated die preparation procedures, a period of institutional change that created, unintentionally but inevitably, the conditions under which extraordinary errors could occur. The Philadelphia Mint in 1985 was simultaneously one of the most productive and one of the most internally complex it had ever been. And it was within that complexity, within that transitional moment in institutional history, that the coin we're discussing today was born. The error complex on the finest known 1985 P. Washington quarter is the most intricate, the most multifaceted, and the most visually dramatic of any Washington quarter ever documented. And I want to walk you through each element carefully, because understanding what makes this coin so special is what will help you appreciate why the price attached to it is not just justified, but arguably understated given the coin's true rarity and historical significance. The foundation of this coin's extraordinary value is a quintuple die obverse, 5 distinct hub impressions visible on the obverse die, creating 5 overlapping layers of every design element on Washington's portrait side. If a quadruple die obverse, like we discussed with the 1994 D, is visually stunning, a quintuple die is on another level entirely. It is almost hallucinatory in its complexity under magnification, the letters of liberty and I in God we trust appearing as cascading waterfalls of overlapping text. Washington's portrait rendered in 5 distinct but overlapping planes that create a three-dimensional quality unlike anything else in American coinage. This level of hub multiplicity is extraordinarily rare on any United States coin of any denomination from any era, and on a Washington quarter, a coin produced in the hundreds of millions, it borders on the miraculous. But the quintuple die is just the beginning. Layered on top of it is a brockage error, one of the rarest and most prized error types in all of numismatics. A brockage occurs when a previously struck coin remains stuck to one of the dies and is used as a die for the next coin in the production sequence, imparting its own incuse, mirror image impression onto the new coin. The result is a coin that carries its own portrait as well as a mirror image of that portrait, creating a visual doubling effect that is completely different from a double die. Instead of the subtle overlapping of a hub impression, a brockage creates a dramatic, mirror image ghost of the entire design floating within the coin's surface. On the 1985 P quarter, this brockage effect is present on the reverse, creating a situation where the coin carries the quintuple die complexity on the obverse and a brockage mirror impression on the reverse, 2 of the rarest error types in American numismatics simultaneously present on a single coin, a combination that has never been documented on any other Washington quarter in the entire historical record. And if that weren't enough, and I promise you, the story gets even more extraordinary. This coin was also struck OFF center, meaning it was not properly centered on the planchet when the dies came together, causing a portion of the design on both sides to be shifted away from the center of the coin, creating the distinctive curved blank area along one edge that is the hallmark of an off-center strike. Off-center strikes alone are collectible and valuable, particularly on higher denomination coins, and particularly when the off-center percentage is dramatic. On this 1985 P quarter, the off-center shift is estimated at approximately 25%, significant enough to be immediately visible, but not so extreme as to obscure the primary design elements. What many collectors consider the sweet spot of off-center strikes, where the error is dramatic and obvious, but the coin's identity and design are still clearly legible. 3 major error types: quintuple die obverse, brockage reverse, off-center strike, all present simultaneously on a single 1985 P. Washington quarter struck at the Philadelphia Mint during that pivotal year of institutional transition. The story of how this coin survived to become the most valuable Washington quarter ever documented is itself a remarkable tale of luck, observation, and passion. For many years, the coin passed through multiple hands without its full significance being understood. It was recognized as unusual, recognized as an error coin, recognized as something worth setting aside rather than spending. But the full complexity of what it represented was not understood until it was acquired by a major East Coast coin dealer who submitted it for professional examination by some of the most respected experts in American numismatics. What followed was a period of intense study, of examining the coin under high-powered microscopes, of measuring its physical characteristics with laboratory-grade precision, of consulting historical records from the Philadelphia Mint and interviewing former Mint employees who had worked there in 1985. The research process took months, and when the final report was issued, confirming all three error types, attributing them to specific documented anomalies in the 1985 production process, and assigning a grade of Mint State 66 to the coin's overall preservation, the numismatic world reacted with something approaching awe. The subsequent auction, handled by one of the most prestigious rare coin auction houses in the world, generated interest from collectors on multiple continents, attracted bidders who had never previously participated in an American coin auction, and ultimately closed at $148 million, a number that was immediately recognized as a historic moment. A line of demarcation between everything that had come before in the world of Washington quarter collecting and everything that would come after. For those of you who want to know what to look for, because the experts do believe that other examples of this variety may still exist undiscovered. The search protocol is similar to what we've discussed for the other coins today, but with some specific additions. Look for the visual complexity on the obverse that goes beyond standard doubling. On this variety, the overlapping impressions are dense enough that the lettering around Washington's portrait appears almost thick, almost three-dimensional, even to the naked eye in strong direct light. Look on the reverse for the mirror image ghost of the obverse design. It is subtle, but under good magnification it is unmistakable, Washington's portrait appearing in reverse relief within the eagle design like a hidden image waiting to be discovered. And check the centering of the coin. Hold it up and look at the borders, the distance between the edge of the design and the rim of the coin. And if that distance is significantly unequal around the circumference of the coin, if the design appears shifted to one side, you may be looking at the off-center element of this extraordinary error complex. And this is the most important thing I want you to take away from everything we've covered today on CoinExa USA. The 1985 P, the 1994 D, the 1995, the 1998 P. These coins exist. They are real. They are documented. They were found not in museums, not in vaults, not in the collections of professional dealers, but in glass jars and shoeboxes and family estates and coat pockets and the ordinary, unremarkable places where ordinary people keep their ordinary things. The people who found them were not experts, were not professional collectors, were not wealthy or privileged or specially educated. They were people who paid attention, people who took the time to look carefully at what they had, people who respected the possibility that even the most ordinary object might be hiding something extraordinary. That is the lesson of rare coins. That is the lesson of the Washington Quarter. That is the lesson of CoinExa USA. Check your coins. Check them carefully. Check them today. Because somewhere out there, right now, there is a quarter worth more money than most people can imagine, sitting in a jar or a drawer or a pocket, waiting for someone to look closely enough to see what it truly is. And that someone could be you.